Hello and welcome back to the Squashcast with myself, Rob Beaumont, and Jesse Engelbrecht.
How's it, Rob? Episode 3 coming up. Hope you enjoy what we have to speak about.
So today we're going to go through the women's top 10. Last week we covered the men's top 10. This week we're going to do it a little bit differently. Each of us have picked our 3 favourites from the year. And we're going to start with number 3 from Jesse first, who is...
My number 3 player from the year is the American Amanda Sobey. She had a pretty good year. She's currently world number 8. She resides from New York. She lives and trains in Boston. She's only 23 years of age. She's broken quite a few records in her young career so far. It's quite interesting reading her bio and what she's done with her career. So she was the first player to get 3 tour titles as a 16-year-old, which is pretty impressive work at such a young age. She also was the first player from the United States to win the World Junior Championships. So another massive feather in her cap as a youngster. She also graduated from Harvard in 2015 and was also named the Young Women's Player of the Year in the same year, which pretty impressive, balancing, getting a degree from Harvard as well as being the Young Player of the Year.
Yeah, did she graduate the same year as Ali Farag? Because he graduated from Harvard as well.
I'm not too sure about that. It could well be. I've got a feeling Ali Farag might be a little bit younger than 23, so he might have graduated the year after. But yeah, good to see some place like Harvard producing, a high level of player as well as people who've got a good brain on them. Again, quite incredible to do this by 23 years of age. And I think she's going to be a serious threat to the top 4 in the next season or two. She's got quite a unique style in that she's the only lefty in the world top 10 of the ladies. She plays with a lot of flair and passion, and in a way a very American style, if I can kind of call it that. She gives a lot of fist pumps. She's really passionate, wears her heart on the sleeve, and she's quite a crowd favorite. When she does play, the crowd tend to warm to her quite a lot, and yeah, she's just a little bit different than what a lot of the other top 10 to offer. My prediction for next season, I think she will potentially reach the world number 5 slot by the end of next season. So currently sitting at 8, but as a 23-year-old with a lot going for her, my prediction, world number 5.
Excellent. Right, well, my third pick for this year would be Camille Serme. She sits at world number 6. She won the British Open in 2015. Not quite so lucky this year, but that performance for me was really where she broke out into the top 10 and became a more well-known player in the women's top 10. With that victory over home favourite Lauren Rosara was a little bit disappointing for us, but you can't have it all. She was the French number 1 at age 19 and turned pro when she was 16. A bit more recently, she hasn't played quite as strongly as you might have hoped. She's more playing to her seedings in each of the tournaments. So who are you going to go with your second player?
My second player I'm going to go for is the young Egyptian, Nouran Gohar. She's currently world number 5 and she's only 19 years of age. Massive prospect in the world game. I think everyone's well aware of her at the moment. She's had quite a few breakthrough results. She won the World Junior Championships in 2015. She also managed to beat Nicole David in the China Open, losing out in the final of that same year in 2015. She beat Laura Massaro, who was the world number 1 at the time, in the Tournament of Champions. So just looking at those few results, she's going to be a real prospect. She's an up-and-comer, 19 years old. She's technically very sound, and especially on her forehand. I think she's probably got one of the best forehands in the game. I use her a little bit as some examples in my coaching practices. She gets that racket up really early and shows a hell of a lot of threat, so whenever she's lining up that forehand, you tend to see her opponents kind of check and stop a little bit because she's got such a threat. It's up so early. She's showing so many options in the court. So, technically she is super sound. Just think when she gets a little bit stronger, develops her strength and her lunge and her control and her balance, she's really going to kind of worry a lot of the top players. My prediction for next season, I think she'll be able to get up to world number 3 by the end of next season.
Wow, that's a big prediction for that one. She's going to have a bit of competition from the current world number 3, who is my second pick, which is Raneem El-Walili. Been a fan of Raneem for a couple of years since she dethroned Nicole David from that number 1 spot in 2014, I believe. It might have been early last year as well. She that's a 9-year reign gone, with one of the strongest youngsters coming through. She was the first Egyptian number one in any sport, let alone squash, which is a great thing for their country, and it really shows how strong squash is in Egypt, which is fairly obvious to guys like us. She came second most recently in the World Series finals, but she did win the Windy City Open, as I think you might have mentioned earlier, and the China Open, which was last September. She made the semi-finals of the World Champs. She lost to El Shabini, her compatriot, which was a closely fought game, and it was one of my favourite games from the World Series finals that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where it could have gone either way, to be honest. It was a really tough fought match, and I think she'll be the next one to challenge for the world number one again, in my opinion. So this time next year I'm predicting world number one.
Nice. We'll see how this plays out. We're quite good to do a review of this podcast we've done in the last couple of episodes in about a year's time. So we'll have a listen back ourselves, look at our predictions. Maybe we might be hiding them a little bit if they are that far out. But we'll do a review of this in roughly about a year's time. So my final player I'm going to talk about is Laura Massaro, currently the world number 2. She recently won the Dubai Super Series, beating the world number 1 and 3 on the way, who were Noor El Shabini and Raneem Al Walili, respectively. You couldn't have probably got a better end to the season than what Laura did in Dubai, showing her passion, showing her determination, showing her fight, when a few people might have not written her off, that's the wrong word, but a few people might have kind of put her aside, kind of looking at the young Egyptians going, nah, they're going to be the ones to kind of dominate the Super Series final. So all credit to Laura for ending on such a high note. I think she's got a big year ahead to maintain the level she's at and to ideally look to regain the world number 1 spot. She is 32 years of age, I believe, so just at that really nice mature age where she's probably got a good balance in her life on and off the court. And as I said, almost like a maintaining year. If she can kind of end the year next year at world number 2, but potentially be pushing for the world number 1 spot, I think that would be a fantastic achievement, because she's got a lot of young players nipping at her heels, as well as players like Camille kind of in the background. Physically, she's in great shape. If she can kind of maintain this physical standard she has, there's no reason why she can't maintain the world number 2, if not get the world number 1 position, because I think she is physically a little bit stronger than the girls around her, and she plays a style of game that suits that physicality. She's developed this really good counter drop in the front now that neutralizes a lot of threats. So when the Egyptian girls or the more attacking girls are throwing the ball in short, she gets on there, she's really balanced, strong legs, gets down low, and she can just do a lovely little counter drop, or she can throw up that lob. So, it's not the most exciting game. That sounds a bit disparaging, but she knows what she can do, and she does it very, very well. And I think she's just going to keep developing it this season. So looking forward to seeing how she can maintain, and if not, get a little bit better next season.
So do you think that physicality is the reason she can hold her own with these young Egyptian players?
I believe it's a massive determining factor. She has got great racket work. She can put the ball away. But physically, I think she can bully some of the other girls, and I mean that in a respectful way. That I think it's really nice to watch that contrast of one of the lighter, quicker players like Nora and Gohar versus someone like Laura, where Nora is going to open the court up and throw the ball in a bit quicker, whereas Laura is going to kind of get on there, set her base, get really strong and balanced, and use that physicality to combat the threat and the skill and the almost the randomness of the young players around her.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're not writing off one of my favourite players on the tour. So I'm going to take the easy way out for my last pick. I'm going to go with the world number 1. It's Noor El Shabini. She's the youngest world champion in women's history, youngest player to reach the world champs final back in 2014, and the second youngest world number 1 of all time. 3 times world junior champion. She won the Tournament of Champions this year, the British Open, and obviously the World Championships. I think the performance that typified it all was the World Championship final against Laura. She was 2-love down and dug deep within herself to bring a performance that pushed her opponent to the brink. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, looking at that, when Laura was 2-love up, I think most people would have bet quite a bit of money for Laura to close that out. But Noah seemed to show this inner resolve and inner kind of mettle and fight that she managed to change the game a little bit, get under Laura's skin, throw a few random angles in and take the ball in short and basically upset Laura's rhythm that had got her 2-love up. I think a bit of nerves initially in the final got the better of her the first couple of games, but once she settled into it and when the momentum came, man, it was hard to look past her towards the end. So I can't see her being dethroned for the season unless someone like Laura can kind of physically get on top of her a little bit more. But it'll be interesting to see. I think the ladies' game is so open. You look at the top 5 and 6 players in the world, they're pretty interchangeable, and it's the one that it sounds obvious, but get that consistency of tournament, month by month, that's going to secure that world number 1 position.
Yeah, I think personally it's going to be a fight out between the top 3 of Raneem, Laura and Noor, where it could be any one of those 3 in the final of any tournament. So we're going to move on to a feature this week. I'm going to ask Jesse a question and get his opinions on it. So this week's question is, Jesse, what do you think is the determining factor for top 10 players in terms of either skill or athleticism? So do players need to focus more on adapting their skill set or improving their physicality for the game?
One of the age-old questions of squash, I believe it's the way the game's evolving and developing. There's so many facets, it almost seems like when these guys and girls are training, they need to be multi-talented at a range of different things. You could almost take a squash player and transfer them to most other sports, and I think they'll be adaptable, more so in the physical sense I'm talking about there. Man, it's fascinating. Look at the top 10 men and women at the moment, and interesting conversations I have with people I coach and members and some of the better players I coach. You watch the game and there's almost a looseness about it, like looking at the straight drives, the length. Some of those balls are coming way off the sidewall, they're getting overhit length. Not often. There's a certain percentage that's pretty much loose. But what that says to me is there's such a priority on the pace of the game that the accuracy and control is maybe take a slight back step for the outright brutality of the game. The pace the game is getting played at has never been faster. They did a study of the game 10 years ago and the same study now in the last year. In a nutshell, there's 30% more shots being hit in a match over the same time period. So they tracked the amount of shots that were happening, and there's more balls going in short, hence there's more shots being played in a certain amount of time, and it's almost random. It's so open, and the quality and control are maybe taking a little bit of a back seat for the speed of the game. So what I'm trying to say, I'm going back around full circle here, is I would slightly say at the moment physicality trumps skill. I think the way the players set their stall out is, can they play faster, harder, quicker, more aggressively than their opponent? I've been watching a bit of Al-Shabagy and using little clips of him for a few of my coaching methods. And yeah, you hear the commentators say it, like the way he almost blasts his way around court. The physical side is slightly trumping the skill side at the moment. That's my opinion. I'll talk about the skill side in a little bit, but what do you think about that, Rob?
I think it's really important that you look at the variety of players that we have in the top 10. So you take the complete opposite each other of Miguel Rodriguez and Omar Mossad. They're totally different in stature, but clearly playing at the highest positions in the game. And I like to see this variety of players where you've got one guy charging around, diving, picking up the ball, and the other guy slamming it in the nick whenever he feels like it. I'd be really interested to hear what you think is going to change in the next 10 years. Yeah,
it'll be interesting. The game might go full circle again in a strange way. You look at the slightly older players, Rodney Martin, Jansher Khan, that kind of era. The accuracy of hitting was phenomenal. The lines they were hitting, the tightness, and there's that debate going. Well, if Jahangar Khan or Jansher Khan was to be transported into today's game, that the better players wouldn't be able to be as fast and physical because he would be too tight. I don't disagree with that, or don't agree as well, but I think the game would be so quick that the more traditional players wouldn't have time to settle into their shot and actually pick the line and pick the accuracy. You know, they would be rushed, they'd be harassed, they would be kind of hustled to be able to kind of try play the shots that they used to, but done at, you know, an exponentially quicker and higher pace. So that's where I think the game might come back full circle, in the sense that it's so open and so fast and so physical now, but the players would arguably get better and used to that style of play, that the accuracy would then increase again. So I think the pace and physicality has gone up that notch. Yes, granted, the skill level is phenomenally high as well, but it almost seems like the skill level has to catch up with the physicality, and that's how I think it will change in the next 10 years, where the physical benchmark has been set. I don't think it's going to get much higher, if I'm honest, but I think the refined skills and the control and little subtleties in the swing and disguises would probably catch up to the physical side. So, you know, in 10 years we could get an amazing hybrid and combination of outright brutal, like ridiculous kind of pace and physicality, but then on the back of that, some unbelievable skill and control, whether it's fast or slow balls, from all players, you know. But I think you made a good point about how different people's bodies and their composite are made up. You know, that's a determining factor in style of play. You know, Miguel Rodriguez, you know, he pushes up so high on that tee, he almost sacrifices, you know, the ball going behind him, because he knows he's quick enough to turn around and run and fetch it. And alternatively, sometimes he hangs back on purpose because he knows he's so fast to run into the front. Someone like Omar Mossad is a bit more of a pure play. You know, he's got that lovely skill and control in the racket work and that racket head, and, you know, physically he doesn't probably prioritize his physical side of the game. I'm not saying he's not physical, but his skill set would slightly trump it. So almost I use Rob's examples there, like a combination of Omar Mossad and Rodriguez could be like what a player might look like in 10 years' time.
Yeah, that's going to be a almost terrifying prospect. So thanks everybody for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud and YouTube.
Yeah, I just want to echo Rob's sentiments there. There's been some nice social media presence from people out there. We're looking to grow it and get our Squashcast even bigger and better. And yeah, you know, more comments, more feedback. We'll accept all of them, whether they're good or bad. It might mold what we talk about in future episodes. But for now, what I'd like to kind of leave you with is we're going to do another recording in the next couple of weeks. And what we're going to look to do is get a few guest interviews in, you know, some top coaches from around the country, some top players. We're going to phone them. We're going to ask for their opinions. So yeah, watch the space. We've got some exciting plans ahead over the next kind of few weeks and months, you know, before the season begins. And then once the season starts, you know, we'll be reporting a bit more on the news and some of the squash stories from around the world. But yeah, we're both quite excited to kind of, you know, get you guys listening to some of the top players and coaches around the world and their opinions on things.
Absolutely exciting stuff for us. So once again, thanks very much for listening, and we will see you next time.